Good evening. Welcome to the meeting of the Plymouth Community School Board for September 5, 2017. If you'll join us in the pledge,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
first item is to set the agenda. Any additions or corrections?
Yes, we have last minute speech coach equipment for Lincoln Junior High, and then we've added an attachment that you also see a paper copy of for a presentation later in the agenda. And then we removed consideration of a crossing agreement for the 17-2018.
Those changes, entertain a motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any questions? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Audience participation. Thank you for being here. Are there members of the audience that would like to address any agenda items this evening? One at a time, please. If you're here for our public hearing on the budget, that'll be directly after our regular board meeting. So, and if you change your mind, we'll have another opportunity near the end of the agenda to, if you have any questions on agenda items. Moving on then to section 2 is the consent agenda. Are there items of the consent agenda that board member would like to pull out and have considered separately? Hearing none, entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second. Have motion and second to accept the consent agenda. Any comments or questions? Quite agree. Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, moving on to section 3. 3.1 is our focus on learning. Looks like that's a good portion of our audience. And tonight we have Menominee Elementary.
Yes, we have Mr. Boyer, principal of Menominee Elementary, is going to introduce his 3 first grade teachers and his first grade students.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for this opportunity for Menominee to come and present some learning that we have done in the first month of school. In first grade, our students make more progress in reading foundation than any other grade. And I am very excited tonight to have all 3 of our Menominee first grade teachers, Mrs. Height, Mrs. Ross, and Mrs. Bagunia. And we have brought along some first grade students, and they're going to demonstrate some of that reading foundation learning that they have done in the first month of school, and then they're going to test your knowledge a little bit. So be ready. Come on up, ladies.
Would you get small use if you get out?
Well, first we're going to demonstrate Tucker signing. Tucker signing is building a bridge between the printed symbol and speech sounds. It provides a multi-sensory combination of hand signs, letters, and sounds to help commit to long-term memory. So boys and girls, raise your hand if you know why are Tucker signs important. Elizabeth.
So you can learn your letters faster and learn the sounds.
Because that helps us do what? Starts us what? With our sounds. We can put them together to start to
Make words.
make words. Very good. So we're going to go through some of these letters and your Tucker sign. So let's see. Everybody put your hands up. Eyes up here so you can see what letter it is. Okay, what's this one? A. A. This one? B. This one?
C.
This one?
D.
unvoiced?
Voice.
Why?
Because you can feel it.
You can feel it when we say G, G, right? Good. Okay, next one.
H.
Is this one a voiced or unvoiced?
Unvoiced.
Unvoiced. Why?
Because you can see your breath and you can't feel it.
Right, very good. Last one.
I.
I. Very good. Now we're going to move on to our slinky presentation.
Okay. We're going to do a little bit of phonemic awareness, and that's the ability to hear, identify, and manipulate the sounds in a spoken word. So, pass out our slinkys. And we're going to get real complicated with some of our words. You can see. Okay, are you ready? Why do we do this? Why do we say money? Do you remember?
Because it's so we can sound our own words faster.
So we can, I mean, it helps us with our spelling too, doesn't it? Okay, so are you ready? Let's get our words here. Okay, we're going to start out real easy. You ready? Hog.
Hog. Good.
Okay, so let's do play.
A.
Good job. Bath. Splash. Good job. Wish. And let's try a really hard one. How about rescue? Ready? You. Very good. Now, Tommy would like some participation from some of you. Anyone? Mr. Samuelson? Oh, no.
You always
Okay, Tommy, you want to give me some words?
Win. Argue. When.
Very good. Kiss your brains, you guys did a nice job.
A marker has spots around. Alright, while we're passing out supplies here for our final presentation, this is going to go over some of the spelling rules that we worked on with the kids. We've been working really hard through the month of August on closed syllables. So the kids are going to demonstrate this first. Everybody have a marker?
Right over behind Mr. A couple, that way.
Alright, boys and girls, we're going to practice one together today, and I'm going to have you guys try a couple. Can anybody tell me what a closed syllable is? Numbers. It's a closed syllable. Owen?
When there's a consonant behind this.
Behind the
Vowel.
vowel. Very good. And it tells us if it's going to be what? vowel's gonna be, McCoy?
Closed or open?
Closed or open, long or short, right? So let's try one together. Let's write the letter B. E. D. First thing we'll do is we'll point to the vowels. Point to the vowel. Is there a consonant after the vowel?
Yes.
Okay, what happens, Tommy?
You close the door.
Close the door. Now E cannot say its name. What does E sound like now? Riley?
F.
F. Short E. Can you tell me the word, Owen? F. Ed. Very good. All right, I'm going to have you guys try a couple by yourself. Go ahead and raise your board.
Okay, I'm just going to have to use my finger.
We can share. Share with me if you want to. Everybody ready?
Yes.
Write the letter S, A, P. Point to the vowel. Is there a consonant after the vowel?
Yes.
All right, go ahead and close the door. Letter A says what? Add. What is the word, Elizabeth? Sat. Okay, erase that one. Let's try a trickier one. Let's write the letter N. O. And that's it. Point to the vowel. Is there a consonant after the O? Emily, what happens?
Open the door.
The door is wide open. O gets to say its name. Long O. What's the word, McCoy?
No.
No. Very good. All right, let's erase that one. We'll do one more. First letter, P. E. V. Point to the vowel. Is there a consonant?
Yes.
All right, close the door. Short E, but what is this word?
And it is a fake word.
It's a fake word. It's a nonsense word. You got it. All right, let's erase our boards. And would you boys and girls help me pass out boards and markers to all of our board members? We're going to let them try some. You can easily come up and bring that. You are welcome. Thank you. Give them some markers and Kleenexes. They'll have to share too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kleenexes down here to share? All right, we are going to have McCoy give you some letters. Oops, so McCoy, I'm going to let you start.
S. I. Find the vowel. Is there a consonant behind it?
Yes.
Is the door closed or open?
Close.
What? How do we mark the vowel?
It's
What does the vowel say? Now leave the word.
Sit. Were we right, McCoy?
H. Find the vowel.
E.
Find the vowel. Is there a consonant behind it?
No.
Is the door closed or open?
Wide open.
How do we mark the vowel?
Long.
What does the vowel say?
E.
Now read the word.
He.
Are we doing well?
Yeah.
M-E-Z. Z.
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 Find the vowel. Is there a consonant behind it?
Yes.
Is the door closed or open?
Closed.
How do we mark the vowel?
Short.
What does the vowel say?
Ed.
Now read the word.
Mez.
Another one of those fake words. Another fake word?
Alright, would you boys and girls please take all the boards and markers? And do you want to take that?
Oh, she's getting mine. Thank you. Thanks, Jen. Go, ma'am. Thank you.
This one is in
Guys are awesome. Yeah, that is really interesting.
nice job. Time, here's your phone. Let's sit and come sit here.
How about a round of applause?
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but when I get stuck on a hard word, I think I'm gonna remember that open and closed door. For sure. Mr. Samuelson, did we want to allow them to leave?
Well, I have some
Before we
questions or
continue?
maybe an
All right.
observation. I'm struck, so why is reading and spelling so important for any of you that were up here? I know that your teachers already asked that, but, yes, sir.
Say the word.
Awesome. And I'm struck by the open and closed door, because by reading and learning, what does that do? It opens a lot of doors, right? Into all kinds of things that you can learn and become. So I love that use of the word door. So thank you all for being here, and the families for bringing your students, and the teachers for taking time. I know it's a busy time of year, and really appreciate you showing us what's going on in Menominee. You are welcome to go home and do some more spelling. Or you can stay. Thank you very
Daniel, I'm so glad you're here. Appreciate that.
Well, that'll be a hard act to follow, but we're going to continue on. Item 3.2, report on alternative school.
We have Katie Duran here this evening, your teacher in alternative program for the annual report on alternative school.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to hear our end of the year report. As you know, this program's been around since 1998, and this is my first year leading the program, but Susie Clevenger was a great mentor. She still continues to help me. Where's the clicker?
Just the right arrow there.
Oh,
You got it.
oh, I did.
I'll get you.
Thank you, Bruce.
Maybe.
Okay. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Marshall County Alternative High School Program and night school, which is part of our grant. As I said, we were started in 1998. We offer 2 sessions at my building. We have the morning session from 8 to 11, so that's periods 1 through 4. Afternoon classes, 11:30 to 2:25, so that's 5 through 7. And the night school starts after Labor Day weekend and goes to the end of the school year, the last week before we go into finals. For a program profile, like if you wanted to read more detailed information about our goals, I provided the link for you there. All right, so a little bit about our curriculum. Last year, our English was a blended curriculum, and what we did is we used Canvas for reading and writing assignments. My kids, a lot of them actually preferred the hard copy textbook, which we offered. And then in addition to that, the other portion of the blended learning was grammar, which was on GradPoint. This year, we're exclusively doing everything through GradPoint, including our reading and writing assignments for English. The second thing about Pearson, have you guys ever had anyone present to you about what we do with the GradPoint Pearson program? No? Okay, then I'll go through. We offer three types of courses we can enroll our students in. We have prescriptive, which is just like it sounds. If you failed and you know like one section, but maybe you have gaps in your knowledge because you didn't turn in your homework or maybe you missed too much school, you can have the ability to go in and take a pre-test and test out of an entire lesson, and it helps for kids to accelerate their learning progress so they can get through a course a whole lot quicker if it's prescriptive. The second one we offer, if you've never taken a course and you're doing it for the first time, we do it sequentially. And this is you start on day 1, lesson 1, and you work your way through. Flex is not something we really utilize in alternative high school because most of my kids are prescriptive or sequential. Flex works best for intersessions if kids are trying to recover, like their grade from an F, bring it up to a D, we'll put them in a Flex course. We also use it for homeward bound students too. So if they want to keep working, and I should mention our passwords are installed for all the tests, so they can't just go in and take a test. So Flex, you can just go chapter to chapter and go back later and take a test with your teacher. And just a good thing about our curriculum is it is aligned to the traditional high school courses as much as possible. I've had kids for various reasons transfer over mid-semester. Maybe they got kicked out, maybe they just want to get done quicker because of life situations. We're able to actually put them in and carry over their scores from traditional into where they're going to be at for GradPoint. So that's kind of the beauty of the system. Now we do offer traditional coursework options pending students' best learning mode. And what I mean by this, some of my kids prefer, like I said, a textbook. So we have some textbooks on hand for kids that don't really want to click through the lesson. They're falling asleep. They're tired of looking at their computer screen. We do have the hard copy books. In addition, I did have one student that had really bad test anxiety for math. She preferred paper, so I could print it off for her and she could sit down and do it and work it out and made her feel a little less stressed. That, and in addition, we do offer elective credits. Just a few, paper and pencil and book. All right, success stories. All right, when I started last year, I had 2 kids that had 19 credits. They, in 1 year, did what was the equivalent of 2 years and earned 23 credits to graduate on time. It was with the help of alternative high school, credit recovery, and night school. If they did not go to night school, there was no way they would have made it. That was a lot of work, and they did hit the wall a couple times on losing motivation, not thinking they were going to make it. We had to get them back on track through various networks of teachers and counselors collaborating together. So those 2 worked really hard. My second story is a single mom who is able to graduate a semester early with the support of Plymouth and the Marshall County High School. She's featured down below in the picture with Mr. Samuelson. I think if I'm correct, weren't you her
That's correct.
Yes, okay, she was also the 2017 Board of Trustees Scholarship recipient. So if any of you sat on the committee for that, she was the candidate picked. She's currently enrolled full-time at IU South Bend for nursing. Her daughter is going to be 3, so it was really good that she was able to graduate early because she was working part-time and needed full-time. Her life situation, it was met, and we were able to accommodate her and get her out on time. And then the last one, I did have an expecting mother who's very determined to graduate a year and a half early before her son was born. And through, yet again, alternative high school, credit recovery, and night school, she was able to graduate not only a year and a half early, but she had like 3 weeks before her baby was due. So that was a real big moment for her. Next. All right, these are just pictures. That's Daisy and her award. That's me and the students at senior awards. And that right there is the mom. Her last credit was earned at night school. It was Algebra 2. She did really good because she got it done in under a month, which is pretty good for teaching herself. All right, the students who were served, for total enrollment, we had 73 between alternative high school and night school. Up top, as you can tell, I had 40. Previous year, Mrs. Clevinger's last year, we had 53 enrolled. The students we served, we had 2 freshmen, 7 sophomores, 9 juniors, who, if you notice down below, it says seniors 22, 29. 7 of my juniors were early graduates, so they went to the senior, like midway through the year, and ended up being part of my senior count. The graduation rate for alternative is 80%. The graduation rate for the previous year for alternative was 92. So we are down, but we're not too far off from the school's average, which was 86%. Night school, like I said, we did have the enrollment of 33 students, and we did have all grades in night school. Part of our numbers for how they made the record count was they had to be on our attendance roster for 10 or more days. We did have students we tried to enroll them in our programs, but they just didn't show up. So the 70 that did, they're the ones that made the cut. 73, sorry. All right, thanks. All right, our goals for alternative is to increase the ECA Math Algebra 1 pass rate, increase the ECA English 10 pass rate. Those are part of our academic goals. Our behavioral goal is to increase the daily average attendance rate and have it improve with time. Now, our attendance rate was 73% collectively, and that is below where we want to be. We do have an action plan in place. For night school, for instance, once students are in, if they have 3 unexcused absences, they will be kicked from the program. So rather than just trying to hope that they're going to finish their credit, we're not going to allow them just to sit there, maybe show up, maybe not, because there is a good group of kids. By second semester, our attendance average was actually up to 90%. It was just the first semester average that brought it down. My personal average was 78, and then the average of both was 73. My personal average second semester was 90% or better, but yet again, first semester brought my record down too. So, and then the pass rate, as you can see, was 80% for both English and math. Mrs. Clevenger had a really cool tradition where for each semester, if you got your credit, you get to put your hand up on the board. So just to show you, semester 1, we earned 87 credits. Semester 2, we earned 136 credits. Now, those are my personal counts. Some of those were homeward-bound students I was working with. But that was a pretty good, I think, first year for just getting my feet wet, I guess, with the kids. So, next slide. All right, course completions, the breakdown. This is for the whole year. Alternative high school had 212. Credit recovery had 225. A part of the credit recovery are the ones I worked with that were homeward bound. Same with other teachers of record. They fell into that credit pool. And the night school accumulated 55, and the total was 482. Now the course completions compared to last year was 470, so we're up 12. So I think we're doing good. We're on point there. And that was all I had. Did you guys have any questions?
Those, those kids that meet those requirements are counted on that graduating year's count, aren't they, Jim?
You mean like,
Like the juniors
Like-
that moved up to seniors?
yeah, they were reflected in the graduation count for last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Doing a great job.
Oh, thank you.
Just tie something together for me. Course completions were up, but number of students were down.
Yeah. Well, I think some of it was due to the fact that we might have had kids that, I think we had multiple classes. I think what it was, honestly, is we had a lot of kids that were enrolled in credit recovery, perhaps. So the credits recovered did go up in that area. I wasn't able to get in as many as Mrs. Clevenger normally does. And I think I did start out, like the two that had 19, that was pretty low to come in with seniors having so few credits. And so that kind of stacked up the numbers. Where most kids could come in and get done after a semester, I had them for an entire year. So that could have, and that prevented kids from coming in because they were holding their seats. So, does that help clarify?
Sure.
Okay.
And just curiosity, this being a Marshall County alternative school, do you recall the numbers that are Plymouth versus non-Plymouth?
They're all pretty much Plymouth. We are Marshall County Alternative High School, but you have to be enrolled in Plymouth to be our student.
Oh, okay.
I do have some that only see me exclusively.
Prior to last
Getting
year,
hand signals.
yeah, I know about that. Prior to last year, as part of the grant, we had included other schools from Marshall County, but we haven't had anyone sent in several years. So as we wrote the grant for this coming year, we worked with the state, and the state said, go ahead, if you haven't had anybody come, and drop the other schools from it. So now it's still called Marshall County Alternative High School, but it's really exclusive for our students here.
Is that the same for night school, or?
Night school is the same thing, yeah. It's students that are enrolled. Many of those students come to school all day long. So when we talk about night school, it's really day and night school. So you're here from 8 o'clock till 6:30 at night, which is some of the, when we talk about the attendance issue, there's a little bit of a burnout there factor that kind of factors in with them. Second semester, everybody's a lot more motivated because they realize, this is what, I'm not going to make it. We had one kid, Mrs. Sheets and I called him in and handed him an application for Ivy Tech. He'd already been accepted to Indiana State, but if he didn't pass Algebra 2, they weren't going to take him. And he amazingly went from not being there to being done with Algebra 2 in about 2.5 weeks. Because all of a sudden he was there every day. When he was at home, he was working. And so it's just, some of it's figuring out how to get them going, particularly if they're there a really long time. They do a lot of really, really hard work, and we've got some really good staff members that help out in all three programs to get them across that line, as well as teachers outside that Katie calls on or I call on to motivate people, or Mr. Bales calls them, or our night school teachers call the teachers and say, hey, can you come in and help this kid? And give them a kick in the pants, whatever it might take.
Right, and when we say we have attendance problems, I call kids, I message kids, I email kids multiple times a morning or day. Like, we're doing whatever it takes to get those kids in. It's just, all right.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.
Keep up the good work.
Item 3.3, consider PHS marching band.
Yeah, Mr. Ames came to us recently with a request for a bit more extensive of a trip, and so I thought it would be prudent for him to come before you to discuss those details and to seek your approval for that. I'll turn it over to Ames.
I think you probably all have a packet, but I'm going to just talk a little bit before we get to that. This trip was actually, some of you have been around long enough to know that this trip was approved in 2007, 2008. And in the fall of 2008, the next year we came back, the year of the trip, there were some financial crises and a couple airlines went bankrupt and filed for bankruptcy, and it caused a chain reaction. And then some smaller airlines also filed for bankruptcy, one of them being Aloha Air. And we were already in the process of planning the trip and just made the decision that school year that we were not going to expose the kids to the prices that we were going to face because the airfare almost doubled. So at that time, we just went with a different trip. We went with Universal Studios and did a performance in Nassau, Bahamas. Melissa was on that trip with us, and Jim was on that trip as well. Oh, actually, that was Dr. Ratliff at that time came with us. Myself, just so you know, personally, I have done student tours everywhere. In PCSC, there's probably nobody who's done more student trips than me. I've taken groups of 100 to 150 to Universal Studios and Disney's 5 or 6 times. 3 Bahama cruises with marching bands, New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., Virginia Beach, Norfolk Naval Base, Busch Gardens, and Pearl Harbor. In 2005, the trip we're looking at, I took the Knox Band. Of all the trips, usually when you say Hawaii, most people immediately just think kind of a frou-frou trip. It's beaches, it's tropical location, and honestly, out of all those trips that I named off, that was probably the one I've said multiple times that I want to do again in my career. It was the most educational tour I've ever taken kids on. We're going to talk about culture and history and that kind of stuff in a second. When we did this trip, like I said, in 2005, the only thing you could compare this to is realistically not going to another state. It's like stepping into a completely foreign country. The culture is completely different. There's all the language barriers. Their lifestyle is very, very different in a culture where you rely 100% on imports. And then there was also Pearl Harbor, the naval base. When we went there, one of the first things that we learned about that a lot of our kids and people don't understand is that it's our only state that was ruled by kings and queens. And at one point in time, every island had a different king or queen. And we learned the history of King Kamehameha, who called a peace treaty to bring the islands together, and what really happened at the Pali Lookout, which we went to. It's this place right here. It's on the side of a volcano. He brought all the kings and queens in for a peace treaty, and then when they arrived, his army, his military, pushed the kings and queens off the side of the volcano, and he peacefully united all the islands. So for a while, they were under one monarchy. We learned the history of how they became part of the United States. Language was a really cool thing. They do multiple syllables, and one of the words that I remember most is humu humu nuku nuku akuaha, which is the name for triggerfish, and that's the state fish. But a lot of the language has multiple syllables, humu humu, nuku nuku. They repeat things a lot, and some of the fun things our kids learned were things like cow cow, which is to eat, and then some very kind of funny words when you think about it. Eat food is poo poo, drink is pee pee. So you have to be very careful too, because you eat at the luau, you go to the bathroom at the luau. So you have to be really careful when you're talking about poo poo and pee pee to make sure you say luau. I think those were the best words we learned. We sang the native songs. The tour guides on the buses taught us some of the songs, and everywhere we went, we sang. Almost everywhere we went, we were singing on the bus. We learned what life is like now that large cities are on the islands and everything is imported. Right around the time that Knox went, there was a strike on the unions that unload the big cargo ships. And one of the hottest commodities at that time was toilet paper, which was like $7 to $10 a roll because there was none on the island. Everything has to be imported. And because of that, the kids kind of fell in love with Spam. Spam is everywhere. Canned meat is everywhere. Every place you went to eat, there was Spam. Even McDonald's has Spam breakfast and value meals. So the Hawaiians have a love for canned meat. Our students were also exposed to hula and the native dances, and the Plymouth kids would have the same thing. And most people think it's just dancing when it's really a form of sign language. Every hand gesture means something, and there's separate hand gestures for males and separate hand gestures for females, and the entire band was given hula lessons. We would be visiting the Polynesian Cultural Center, which, if you've ever been to Epcot, it's kind of the Epcot of the Hawaiian Islands. And it's really the Polynesian Islands, Samoa, Fiji, all the different Hawaiian Islands. It is a center where you can go and learn about the history and culture of all those different islands. One of the kids' favorite thing when we did that trip was Samoa, because we learned that in Samoa the women do the hunting and the men do the cooking and cleaning. And showed us little things like they brought some people up from our group and asked them to open a coconut and gave them a sledgehammer, and we couldn't open it. Even some of our big guys couldn't open it. And then the native Samoan guy took a stone about this big and went, popped it open and showed us how to get water out of coconut. In addition to the history and the culture, the wildlife is completely different. The plant life we were exposed to was completely different. But obviously the best part of the trip was Pearl Harbor. We spent an entire day there, and it's the only time in my teaching career where I've seen 100 kids stand in absolute silence. Jim was with me on that trip, and we had someone come out, walked all the kids out to the bay, and spent time with our kids, and told us what the sky looked like, told us what was going on the day that Pearl Harbor was attacked, told us to look over to the right, and showed us the valley between the mountains, and said right there is where the planes came through, right over your head is where they flew. Talked to us about the Japanese bombers completely flew over all of our oil tankers, because they thought surely the Americans aren't dumb enough to put their oil tankers right next to the ship. Well, we were. But they thought they were decoys because they were sitting next to the ship, so that whole side of the base wasn't touched. Learned the history of the Arizona Memorial, and we got to visit the Arizona Memorial. Interesting fact there was the Arizona, almost everyone on that ship died. The vast majority of the people on that ship died, and it was because of their marching band. The day before the event, every ship had a marching band or a parade band, and they had a tournament, and the Arizona won. So they were relieved from active duty that day, so they were all asleep in their bunks in the ship when the ship was attacked. Our kids were really taken back when they learned, too, that the military did not check ages at that time, and many of the people who died were their age or younger. There were a lot of 16, 17-year-old boys at Pearl Harbor who had lied about their age to get away from home and to serve, and the government really didn't do follow-up at that time, and there were kids who legally weren't old enough to be in the military who were on those ships. We will do just like Knox did, and we're looking to do a performance at the USS Missouri. And if you're not familiar with Pearl Harbor, the Arizona, where the Arizona sunk in the memorial, they have parked the USS Missouri, and that's the ship where the treaty was signed. So it kind of signifies the ship that started the war and ended the war. And we plan on taking a flag, and they will fly our flag over the USS Arizona Memorial. Give us the flag back. When we do a performance of the USS Missouri, they'll fly that same flag over the Missouri. So we will come back to Plymouth High School with the flag that was flown over those two ships. There are chances to sightsee, and there are chances to go to the beach and do some of the fun things in Hawaii. But as I said, this is probably the most educational trip I've ever done with kids. The cost of the trip is a little high, and that's why if you notice the dates, it's actually just under 2 years away. I wanted to make sure that if we looked at something like this, that we really did have adequate time. And it would be looking at spring break of 2018-19 school year. So they would have all of this school year, summer, and most of next school year to fundraise. And myself personally, I just wanted to talk to you about some of the things I've done. As I said, they've both been on one of my trips. These are things, even just when you have approved like our group to go to WGI finals or just an overnight trip, these are some of my personal rules that we have. We always check luggage, even just on a single overnight trip. Usually Mrs. Porteous or someone from the guidance will come down and do the female luggage. Somebody comes down and does the male luggage, and we have all of our luggage inspected. They check every container. They log all medications. All of our trips have a nurse and an administrator, and every trip I've ever taken has had both of those. And Music Travel Consultants is great to us. They let the administrator go for free. Jim has been on probably 5 or 6 of my trips. Dr. Ratliff, when she was here, went on the Bahama trip. But the nurse is one of those things that we always take, and it really does come in convenient when there's one person who knows what every single kid has, down to a bottle of ibuprofen. One of my rules is always, too, you never have anyone in the room of the opposite sex. So boys never in the girls' room, girls never in the boys' room. We've only had one offense to that in the 11 years that I've been here on a trip. And a young man walked into a girl's room to get a slice of pizza and missed 2 days of Universal Studios because he sat with his mom, who was a chaperone at Universal Studios for 2 days and didn't join the rest of the kids. So they learned really quick. We are very strict on that. Chaperone groups are mandatory all times in all locations. We usually try to have one chaperone for about every 5-6 kids. And when we took Knox, we actually had more grandparents come than parents. We had a lot of grandparents who wanted to come to experience Pearl Harbor. As I said, all medication is logged. We have an administrator and a nurse. Rooms are checked every night. And this is something I do, like I said, even just when we do a single overnight trip, these are always on our door. That's at the back of your packet. And so we will go around at room check-in, and I check the male rooms. Usually Miss Walden or somebody will check the female rooms. We make sure the right kids are in the room. We shut the door, we take the doors, we take the peepholes. Then this goes on the door. And then every whatever times we set with our chaperones, they walk the halls, they come by, the chaperone notes the time and initials it. And then I usually keep these for about a year. Just so if anybody were ever to say, well, something happened, I have verification that they were in their room at that time. Music Travel Consultants is the agency we use, and they're absolutely the best. They've done every student tour that I've ever done, and they provide someone who is with us the entire trip, and they provide a 24-hour emergency hotline, so it doesn't matter if it's 3 o'clock in the morning. If you need to reach your kids, somebody's going to answer the phone and get you our tour director who's with us and make sure that you can communicate with your child. I think that's about it. In the packet, it just shows you a rough itinerary. The one thing that we can't plan is you can't solidify airfare until 6 months prior. So these are all based on, unless something drastic were to happen like it did in the 2007 or 2008, 2009 school year, these are approximate prices. But it gives you a list. It was like Sunday, there's about a 6-hour time difference. It's about a 12 or 13-hour flight one way and about 10 coming back because of how you're moving with the Earth. It just takes less time to come back. But there's about a 6-hour time difference, and it just goes through everything step by step, where we'll be at what time, what the kids are doing, what they're exposed to, all the way through the last day. Now, when I say it's rough, this is everything that's in the tour package, but say we can't do Pearl Harbor on Tuesday, but they can get us in on Thursday, they might flip Tuesday for Thursday. Prices and the way the prices work, the average cost is going to be between $2,400 and $2,500. If the rooms, if he has all the different rooms broke down, they do not charge a kid if they simply can't get into a quad room. So if our number, say if we have 16 girls on the trip, that divides by 4, so it's easy. But we had 15 guys, and that doesn't divide by 4, and you get a room of 3, those kids don't have to pay the room of 3 price. They still pay the room of 4 price, as long as we attempt to get everybody into room of 4s. Chaperones pay their own way to come along, and usually when we did this trip, we probably took 15 to 18 adults with us. And like I said, a lot of them were grandparents. This tour was also one of the easiest sells to our community because we had multiple kids who could not afford to go on the trip when we took Knox. And we had the American Legion, the VFW, different organizations like that who were stepping up trying to help kids because they wanted kids to visit Pearl Harbor. And when I said we took a Plymouth High School flag, we actually took about 3 or 4 flags that got flown, and then those organizations, like at the Knox VFW right now, they have our American flag on display. So we took extra flags to make sure that any of those organizations that donated got something back in return to display. I think that's about it. I hope that was enough information. I do have pictures of the different locations at Knox Point if anybody wants to see pictures or anything like that. A couple of places that I didn't mention, we are going to Diamond Head, which is the volcano in Waikiki. We're going to climb Diamond Head. This is a Dole pineapple plantation. There's a catamaran cruise and snorkeling involved one day. And some downtime, like I said, on the last day, just for kids to do some shopping or spend some time at the beach as well.
Well, I've been to Pearl Harbor, and I'm sure several people have, but tremendously educational and rewarding experience for those kids. And I certainly support it, and would so move that we accept the trip and go for it.
I'll second.
By the time this comes around, it will have been almost a decade since we did our last tour. 2010 we went to Washington, D.C., so it's been a while.
If Brian Ames wanted to take our kids to Mars, I have no doubt they'd be safe.
I agree.
I've seen
Thank you
how
for
it
your time.
works.
Oh, wait a minute, I have a question. We have a motion.
Yeah.
You're right, okay. this discussion, I was reading and listening and probably not doing a good job of either one. So where would you stay? I'm sorry, what?
Where are you staying?
Where actually, well, people, where are you staying? I missed that.
We would pick
Okay.
our location, and when Knox went, they actually gave us the option of like 3 different hotels. And it's right on the area of the beach in Honolulu.
But it'll be
They have 2 or 3
Honolulu,
hotels that are very teenage friendly and work well with student groups. And then what they did last time is they gave us the different options and then let the staff pick which hotel to win.
And perhaps, unlike other areas of the country during spring break, how crowded is that during? I'm sorry, how crowded is that, like, on spring break? Is that an issue? Yeah, I mean, people
That
go-
time of year, it's not very crowded at all. In fact, probably the busiest place we went was Pearl Harbor. I think it's pretty busy year-round, but that was the one. We had a little bit different privilege, though, because we were performing. We got taken right over, so we didn't have to wait. So there were people, student groups and stuff, who were not performing, who did have to wait a long time to get into Pearl Harbor, but we went straight over and got right in because we were
Generally an older crowd too, Mr. Samuelson. It's unlike some of the spring break destinations that one might venture to. It was, when we went, it was generally an older crowd, lots of military veterans. Our students, as Brian mentioned, were from Knox at that time and were really treated like royalty by the veterans as they performed.
Sounds great.
my cash off too close to me.
I lost track. I think I heard a motion.
Yes. Yes.
So, are there any other questions? He's gone, so.
He's got bands going.
I know. If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Melissa, are you signing up right away?
I had to do one of those 3 a.m. chaperone checking things. I'm not good at that. It's not my time of day, but I would do it.
I do thank you for that, and I know the first time we did that at Knox, that was a stressful trip. I went because I'm picturing 150 students in a school of 700 on a flight, a 12-hour flight, and I was nervous to say the least. Going on trips with Brian really created the model that we use for our other chaperones to live by and to practice many of those same techniques and procedures that he uses. And he created those on his own.
It is a long flight.
It is a long flight, especially if you don't like flying.
Very good. Could be a great experience. Hope they can pull it off. Item 3.4, consider rainy day expenditure resolution.
Previously the board passed a resolution that stated that it would approve in advance any expenditure from the rainy day fund. With respect to our building project, we need to pay some architect fees and need to do that prior to receiving some bond proceeds. So with that, this resolution seeks your approval to pay for those out of the rainy day fund and then to reimburse the fund once we do receive bond proceeds.
So moved.
Second. Motion and second. Any further questions? It beats going out for outside financing.
Yes.
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. 3.5, first reading, new and revised policies.
This first reading, as is usually the case, they're related to updates in state or federal laws or rules or relevant case laws. So some things with respect to the new federal ESSA guidelines, legal settlement updates from Indiana Code, some questions with respect to executive orders that come from the federal government. First reading, if you have questions, I'll be happy to help answer those or find answers.
Full disclosure here, I haven't gotten through them yet, so I don't have any questions. Anybody have any additional questions? We'll have it on, as I said, October. Very good. Move on to section 4, superintendent comments.
Yes, with respect to commitment to students, recently our high school guidance department coordinated 2 days when seniors were able to sit down, review the transcript of a counselor, and discuss their options after high school. We also had representatives from Mansell College, Ivy Tech, and Work One available to meet with students regarding their various programming opportunities. To fit the students' post-high school needs. It was really neat to be there to see kids just talking about and giving some very specific concrete information on what their next steps are going to be in the next few months. Very worthwhile time spent, and it's going to broaden into other grade levels as well. Caring, PHS Senior is organizing a 5K run walk to raise funds and draw attention to domestic violence. That's moving forward for a second time here, and bless her heart for doing that. High expectations and teamwork combined. I've talked about our eWin grant. We had our first convening here this past week and made some progress. We had stakeholders together from the business community, county government, Work One, Ivy Tech, and SILA. We had teachers there from the high school, administrators, and had a productive first meeting to start to bring people together to further develop that pathway. Integrity, we have a high school student, Cameron Riddle, has taken on a volunteer project to help clean up the wooded area behind Washington Discovery Academy. The goal is to reestablish some of the trails and open areas to make it more of an outdoor running space like it once was. And then enjoyment, recently we had some Riverside Intermediate students who spent time visiting and volunteering in Miller's Manor, and it was just, again, neat to see, and moments like those are invaluable experiences and create some solid memories for both sets of groups.
Thank you. Any questions for Andy? Very good. We'll move on. Any other business? The crowd has been, but are there any comments on the agenda items, Carol?
Could we know the name of the Lincoln Junior High speech coach and what the position is?
Coach.
Madison Wolford. I'm sorry? Madison Wolford. It's spelled very well. Thank you. She's a teacher. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Anything from any board members? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Before I do, we have a budget hearing, so don't go anywhere. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.